Hey, 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 happy Thursday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, obviously enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everyone. Tonight is Thursday, April 30th, 2026. This is live stream 1317. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out it's super casual around here. Just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop role-playing game news. And then we'll normally discuss a topic related to our hobby, which is what we'll be doing tonight. Talk about that in just a moment. But of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And then, of course, because this is a live show, there is chat available. Now, you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least an hour before you can take part in chat. But if you check off that box and you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my absolute best to respond. First out the gate tonight, we have got Cthulhu. The Madman is with us, as is Roger Perdome, Danny Gable, Michael Berry, retired on a bike. Might be a first-time visit, maybe a second-time visit, because that's not necessarily ringing a bell as far as nicknames go. Semper Buffo is with us, as is Sam GM for Life. And the Madman's given us some bad news here. I have not heard this yet. But I guess Jody Black of Pinnacle Entertainment Group and Carolina Game Tables is going to be taken off of life support on Saturday. All the other options they had available to them were exhausted. That's too bad. That is not good news. I had mentioned, what was it? It wasn't that long ago, not even 2 weeks ago, that she was ill. And her husband had posted that she needed, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a couple of lung transplants. And of course, you know, when you get to be our age, I think Jody Black was a little bit older than I am. I don't necessarily have you like right there, right up front on a list for, you know, transplants and things like that, which makes sense, I suppose. But yeah, that's too bad. I hate to hear something like that, but thank you for the update, Madman. I do see the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D is joining us tonight. The Shadow Moderator is back. Harvey Chuckles has joined us, and Tessie Trekkie. So chat is off and running. So yes, the Madman says, yep, it was supposed to be a double lung transplant. Her health deteriorated significantly over the past 2 weeks. Sam GM for Life says, we're not old. We're aged like fine wine and cheeses. Yes, we just keep saying that to ourselves, don't we? Well, very sorry to hear that things did not turn out better for Jody Black of the Pinnacle Entertainment Games fame. Terrible to hear that. Really, really is. But we had a big show ahead of us tonight, so we're going to dive on into that. Do want to let you know that tonight's topic, I'm going to share 5 fantasy role-playing games that I currently think are more fun than Dungeons & Dragons 2024. And keep in mind, this is not a let's rip on D&D video tonight. Just talking about some games that I think I personally find to be more entertaining than the current state of Dungeons and Dragons, especially as far as adventures. I'm going to talk about that. But some of these you have heard me discuss multiple times here on this channel. So I highly doubt any but maybe one is going to be a surprise. And that's going to be a surprise because I really haven't talked about it as of late, except yesterday. Yes. And I think it was brought up on Tuesday's show, but not by me, by someone else. Can you rip on it in chat? Asked Sam, GM for Life. Of course. Of course you can. Certainly. Zarquan's also with us tonight as well. All right. So let's move on into the news because you can now get ready for a new Pathfinder Beginners box. It is arriving in stores next week from Paizo Inc. I've got the lowdown on Secrets of the Unlit Star. Take the first step into an amazing world of fantasy adventure. Pathfinder Beginner Box Secrets of the Unlit Star contains everything you need to learn how to play the Pathfinder role-playing game, including rules to create your own fantasy hero and tools to make your own amazing stories. This new version of the Beginner Box revitalizes player options, including more ancestries and 4 different classes, and includes all new adventure scenarios, maps, and setting details for even more adventures. Will you be a mighty barbarian, cutting down your foes in a furious rage, or a nimble monk, darting in and out of the fray with precise martial art strikes? Perhaps you'll choose a bard's music, soothing and supporting your allies. Or perhaps you'll channel the ancient magic of your bloodline as a powerful sorcerer. It's all up to you. Inside, you'll find a rich toolbox filled with everything you need to get started, including rules for character generation, an introductory adventure, guidelines to build your own campaign, character sheets, a full-color map, character pawns, and dice. This deluxe box set is the ideal introduction to the Pathfinder role-playing game, leading the way to a lifetime of adventure. Inside, you'll find a 72-page Hero's Handbook, which includes rules for character generation, solo adventure, skills, spells, and equipment, an 88-page Game Master's Guide containing an introductory adventure, over 20 pages of monsters, rules for building your own adventure, and magic items. 4 pre-made characters so you can jump right on into the action, and 4 blank character sheets if you want to make your own hero. Over 100 sturdy paperboard character and monster pawns to use on the full-color double-sided adventure map, 4 game reference cards to help players remember their available actions, as well as a complete set of polyhedral dice, including a D20, D12, D10, D8, D6, and D4. Boo! We want 4 D6s. I mean, we'll survive with just 1, but still, prefer to have 4. Whether you're new to Pathfinder or tabletop role-playing games in general or a seasoned veteran, Pathfinder Beginner Box Secrets of the Unlit Star is an all-inclusive on-ramp to the game and danger-filled world of Pathfinder's Lost Omen setting, as well as a springboard for countless adventures for you and your family and friends. The new Beginner Box is hitting stores on May 6th. It's going to carry an MSRP of $49.99. Now, I have received the PDF of this. I also received the PDF of the Adventure Collection for Pathfinder that's also arriving in stores next week. I have to reach out to my contact at Paizo Inc. because the last wave of physical books that came out I did not get copies of. I got PDFs of them, but I did not get copies. So I have to reach out and find out, are you just sending PDFs now? Because I won't be doing reviews of them because I don't review PDFs. It doesn't matter who you happen to be. Having said that, I'm hoping I get an opportunity to check this out because it sounds like a really nice beginner box. Now, the MSRP is, I want to say $10 more than the previous beginner box. But I also have to say, I like the fact that it's not just rehashing the same character classes as the other beginner box, which had been updated for the remaster of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So if you already have that, you could still pick this up as well. It's got a new adventure, more character classes, more pawns, obviously enough. So not too shabby at all. Kevin King has joined us in chat. Good to see you. Welcome aboard. Moving right along, Fallout Wasteland Wanderer has now landed in PDF from Modiphius Entertainment. Here's what I know. Welcome to your life on the surface. Congratulations! If you're listening to this, you've been selected to leave your vault and explore the surface. If it's Reclamation Day, see the accompanying leaflet VLPD-11-A. This survival guide has been prepared for your lone expedition with instructions on how to navigate the possible dangers after decades of nuclear disaster. But don't worry, you won't really be alone because thanks to your Vault-Tec issued Pip-Boy, you'll be able to record your expedition's progress. It is imperative that you record your progress so that if your Pip-Boy is reclaimed by your replacement, they'll know what to do next. This solo role-playing game contains a complete standalone set of rules adapted from Fallout the role-playing game to play original Fallout stories with characters of your own creation. With this 256-page full-color PDF, you'll be able to create an original Vault Dweller to roleplay, as well as their original vault. Explore a randomly generated wasteland and record your story as you travel the surface. Learn about the Fallout setting and its factions from coast to coast. Generate quests, scenarios, opponents, and obstacles from a huge variety of random Oracle tables. And this is also compatible with Fallout, the role-playing game, also from Modiphius Entertainment. You can grab this 256-page PDF over at DriveThruRPG as of today for $28. I think the book is slated for July. I am not positive on that. For all I know, it could be hitting stores next week. I just don't happen to have. It's still showing that it's a pre-order, essentially, is what I've got available to me. I do not have like a ship date in front of me. So I am going to take a guess, like some of the other Modiphius Entertainment releases that we have seen now available in PDF. Maybe July. Might be earlier than that. Who knows? I'm kind of curious about this. I sort of have the feeling you're probably looking at a journaling game, which is going to be a kind of similar to Captain's Log, which is the Star Trek Adventures solitaire game from Modiphius. I would be curious. But got a lot there to keep you occupied. Keithula says, Jacob from XP to level 3 created his own Fallout mod. I'm curious how that London mod went. The England mod that, didn't they run into some copyright issues right before they released it and they had to pause? That everybody was all excited that it was coming out because I think it's free, if I remember correctly. And then suddenly it was like, oh, hang on, we got to put the brakes on it. Retired on the Bike says they're still playing Fallout 4 after all these years. Need to pick this up. Sometimes in the Winters with us said they pre-ordered that one. Wait, what? Journaling? I was hoping it would let me learn the regular Fallout 2D20 RPG rules. I doubt it. Oh, okay, hold on. Maybe I shouldn't say it that way. I don't remember in Captain's Log if it was a different. I think maybe like the basic mechanics of it was still a 2D20. I don't know. Witchlight has finally made it to a show. They are in traffic and they're asking for a sad trombone sound effect. Womp, 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 womp. Hopefully that was good enough. Good to see you make it. Because I know on the Discord server, Wishlight was saying, I can never get home in time for the show. All right. Sam GM for Life says they can relate with Witchlight because they just got home from picking up their teenager from a school event. All right. Time to talk about the third of 5 money-saving deals celebrating Traveler Week from Mongoose Publishing and Bundle of Holding. That's right. We're going to be talking about the Mercenaries bundle, and I got the deets on the deal. Check your panels, Traveler. This revived December 2023 Traveler Mercenaries bundle features Soldier for Hire supplements and adventures for the second edition Traveler tabletop science fiction role-playing game line from Mongoose Publishing. It is one of several spacefaring offers that Bundle of Holding has launched during Traveler Week 2026 to mark Traveler Day, celebrated each year on May 1st in recognition of the cover copy on the 1977 first edition of Traveler. This is free trade or Beowulf calling anyone. Mayday, Mayday. Told you you'd get a different voice today. For just $12.95, you'll get all 3 titles in this revived offers player collection, which has a retail value of $97 as DRM-free PDFs, including Mercenaries of Charted Space, and the Field Catalog. And if you pay more than the current threshold price of $27.13, at least that's what it was this morning, it might be a couple of cents more than that, you'll level up and also get this Revival's entire Referee collection with 5 more titles worth an additional $101, not Dalmatians, including Specialist Forces, Salmani Front, and 3 Mercenary Adventures. Valoran Hoop, Bug Hunt, and Must Travel Need Guns. I like that title because it's the take-up of what? Anybody want to guess? I'll leave that for chat. I will leave that for chat to figure out. I'm sure somebody's going to get it. Maybe give you a hint, Paladin. Remember, you can start with the core rule book in the revived Mongoose Traveler Update Bundle, and you can look for other offers launching this week. I think there's 2 more for them to arrive, including the all-new Imperial Navy, which we talked about yesterday, and the revived Great Rift Bundle, which I will be sharing a news piece about tomorrow. Not live, it'll be on the website. These savings are going to run through May 18th. Yes, sometimes in the winter and Cthulhu. Have gun will travel. Harvey Chuckles is hanging with us, said they picked up the Traveler Update selection today. Cool. The Tabletop Scholar has also popped on in. They said they remastered the Mayday cover for an acrylic bust. That's pretty wild. And Kathy Evans is with us in chat tonight also. On to our next news piece. The latest issue of Carcass Crawler is now available in print and PDF for Old School Essentials. And I've got the skinny from Necrotic Gnome, and the title of that company always makes me laugh. An Exalted Funeral, also kind of a silly name for a company, but still. The 6th issue of Carcass Crawler, the official Old School Essentials zine. Each issue is packed with new material for your games, including new character classes and races, new spells and magic items, new monsters, optional and expanded rules, referee advice, previews of in-development products, short adventures, and more. In this issue, you'll find new races and classes. You'll get 2 new dwarf demi-human classes, the dwarf brewmaster and the dwarf runesmith. Deities and cults, commonly worshipped by dwarf adventurers, including unique spells for their clerics, Azith, the rich god, Barg, lord of crushing earth, and Gridaga, lady of sanctuary. Detailed establishments to drop right into your games with taverns and inns, as well as simple rules for 3 common tavern games, along with guidelines for contests of strength, wits, and more. You'll also find Dungeon Flora, 20 weird plants and fungi that thrive in the mythic underworld. 4 new monsters that can be trained as subterranean mounts. 8 new elemental monsters. We've got the Tavern of Elemental Evil, a mid-level short adventure by Brad Kerr, set in a malfunctioning magical forge complex that lies long forgotten in a tavern cellar. The 32-page saddle stitch zine with PDF carries an MSRP of $15, or if you want to score just the PDF, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $7.50. Always nice to see a new issue of Carcass Crawler arrive. Very cool. Bust out some new options for Old School Essentials. Pete Zraklich says that they can't wait for a Carcass Crawler hardcover collection of zines. I wonder if that's on the horizon. They've got 6 issues. The issues usually run about 32 pages. I don't know. It didn't, I guess 190 pages or so. That would probably be all right. That would not be a problem. Sometimes in the winter was asking, was that our trivia? No, that was not our trivia tonight. Sorry. But this is our trivia giveaway tonight, issue 6 of Carcass Crawler. So once we wrap up the news, I will give you the trivia question. I actually haven't thought of it yet. I'll come up with something. Yes. All right. Our final news piece. The latest Midgard release from Kobold Press has arrived in print for Tales of the Valiant and Dungeons and Dragons. It's time to explore the frozen frontiers with the Northlands World Book. Dragon ships cut through icy waters. Legendary heroes gather in firelit halls, and the clash of steel echoes across snowbound realms. Welcome to the Northlands. Designed as a campaign overlay for the Tales of the Valiant system, the Northlands World Book invites players to venture into a mythic landscape inspired by saga and legend. Explore towering giant realms, battle fearsome new dragons, fend off relentless raiders, and harness powerful magic shaped by fate itself. What awaits in the North? New character options. Choose from 8 new subclasses, including the fate-touched Norn-bound cleric and the cunning trickster warlock. I've got a cunning trickster warlock, me lord. Along with 5 new playable species, such as giantkin and bearfolk. You'll face 50 new monsters, engage with 9 factions, and discover over 80 new weapons, spells, and magic items. Drop your campaign into fully realized settings like the Realm of Boars. Realm of Bears. It's kind of blocked by a wire. I was like, as soon as I said boars, I'm like, shit, I bet it's not. And it wasn't. It's bears and the kingdoms of the giants. Got that one right. Take to the seas with expanded sailing and ship combat rules. Wield rune magic, shape destiny through fate mechanics, and build your legend with reputation systems. From frostbitten shores to the halls of giants, the Northlands offer a brutal and beautiful frontier where glory is earned and legends are forged. The 280-page hardcover is now available for an MSRP of $49.99, while the PDF can be yours right now over at DriveThruRPG for $29.99. Yes. And I should point out, I've got the sagas to go alongside the World Book. Now, here's something that's thrown me off a little bit. So, this shows 5e 2024. It's also Tales of the Valiant. Now, over on DriveThruRPG, they're just saying Northlands, World Book, and Sagas. But over on the Kobold Press website, it's showing a listing for Tales of the Valiant, and it's also showing a listing for D&D 5.5. Two separate listings. So as an example, the 5.5 shows that you can bundle it with the PDF for $59.99, which is usually how Kobold Press works. So you get the PDF for an extra $10 if you order the physical book from Kobold Press. Weirdly enough, the Tales of the Valiant edition doesn't give you that option. It's like, So, Laconic Lane says there's another Tales of the Valiant version coming out in the summer. For the World Book, there's only one Sagas book. You know what? Let's take a peek. Hey, you know what? 5e? Well, 2024. And there's our Tales of the Valiant. But not on the back of this one. That's kind of weird. Because funny enough, now that Laconic Lane, welcome back, by the way, has mentioned that the Tales of the Valiant edition is coming out in the summer, I was thinking to myself, damn, there's two different versions of these books. I'd rather have the Tales of the Valiant. I won't be shocked if my friends over at Kobold Press end up sending the other edition of the World Book. But I just wanted to point this out because that means I'll have reviews of these in the not too distant future. Yes. Okay. So that was the news tonight. And of course, I did mention DriveThruRPG a few times. So don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to go visit, say, DriveThruRPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, any of the numerous One Bookshelf sites, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a 5% commission on that sale. On most sales, I get 5%. And all those commissions really do add up and help keep gaminggang.com around. Also want to mention, we are an affiliate of Kobold Press. So if you are interested in any of the Northlands books or Tales of the Valiant, anything from Kobold Press, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. And as an example, if you're looking at the Northlands books, got a new news piece today. Just click on the news piece, use those links. They go a long way to helping us out. So there's that. I don't have any ads for Kobold Press. I should put some ads, maybe like a little square ad on the sidebar or something like that. Sam GM for Life says their wife loves Kobold. They make her B-Day and Christmas easy. Yeah, there you go. Let's see. Anybody else? I think we had a few more. I thought we had a couple more pop in the chat. There we go. Troy Cornelson, as well as Mark Hawkswell. So welcome to you both. Anyway, I should also mention, if you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. If you enjoyed the Gaming Gang, if you find the outlet to be a valuable resource, you like the channel, hell, you just dig what we do, you can also have a couple of other ways outside of TTRPG and Kobold Press and Fanatical and Humble Bundle affiliations to support the outlet. One, by making a one-time donation by way of PayPal. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Thank God it's not a dribble cup. And of course, you can become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links down in the show notes. Also in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. Absolutely free to sign up. So be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Okay, so our giveaway tonight is a PDF of Carcass Crawler issue 6. And I am going to give it away to one lucky trivia question winner. Since it seems to be dwarven focused, and there's also some mention of the underworld, since this is a zine that's affiliated with Old School Essentials, what is the name of the dark dwarves who live underground in Old School Essentials? First person with the correct answer, with the correct spelling, is going to win that PDF of Carcass Crawler issue 6. All right. So I will allow people to keep banging away. I will tell you right now, those are not the correct answers. Oh! Everybody all of a sudden screeching halt. They're like, wait, what? Would defeat. Anyway, while you're figuring that out, I think it's time for a brief intermission. Oh, Danny Gable's got it. And I think he's got the correct spelling as well. There you go. Oh, he's like banging away at it twice. Anyway, here is your brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Everybody loves pizza, the worldwide taste treat. And no one makes more delicious pizza than you'll get at our snack bar. Pizza, please. It's freshly baked to your order, served crisp and piping hot, skillfully prepared with a delicious combination of mozzarella, provolone, and Romano cheeses. in our full individual size, with our deluxe sauce that's lip-smacking good. Yes, everybody loves pizza. Join the crowd headed for the snack bar, where everybody orders that delicious, wholesome, taste-tempting pizza.
Gobbledygook. What's its face? Whatchamacallit? Whatever it is, whatever it was. Chocolatey chocolate. Whatchamacallit? How's it go? Wowzle do. Chewy caramel. Whatchamacallit? Doohickeys. You know what I mean. Peanutty crispies. Chewy, chocolatey, crunchy. Do that. Let's get 'em ring. More than a mouthful. It's whatchamacallit. Whatchamacallit? Whatchamacallit?
Did you put a note in that bottle last week?
Sure I did.
What'd you say?
I said send us more Wilkins coffee.
Yeah, I'm sure that looked like many of your game tables after you tried to tell the players how to become better players based on last night's show and the tips I shared and what we discussed. Smacking and whacking each other with books and stuff. Yes. And it does appear that I was incorrect with the trivia question. Here's a weird thing, though. I don't think the Dark Dwarves are actually in Old School Essentials. Are they? Drow are the turn out our dark gnomes. I don't know. I don't know. So I'll tell you what we're gonna do. Let's see. Didn't sometimes in the winter just win something this week? For some reason I think they did. Okay, so Kevin R. Smith says, yeah, they are an advanced fantasy. Did I say advanced fantasy though? Yeah, that counts because the Dark Gnomes weren't in Classic Rules either. So, Classic Rules Tome, I guess I should say. All right. So, I'm just trying to see. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I just sent a link to a product to sometimes in the winter. And who's the first? I think they were the first to get it right. Then we got Cthulhu, who's always winning. Oh, there you go. Okay, so sometimes in the winter is our winner. No, that's fine. No, you're right. I just remember I shot you a link to the PDF, and that's why I'm like, was it this week? I know it was this week that I sent the link, but there you go. All right, and Danny Wan is with us in chat. So we got a nice chat rocking and rolling tonight. Yes. Very nice. Very nice. Hey, so before we get on into 5 fantasy role-playing games, which I think are currently more fun than Dungeons & Dragons 2024, otherwise known as 5.5. I've been calling that since it came out. I guess everybody at Wizards Coast finally decided to get on board with that not too long ago. Do want to say thank you to our Patreon members. So, big tip of the cap to Ben Althwaite, Kaval, Kevin R. Smith, Talzek, Sean O'Donnell, Herman Lutman, Gustavo Covalho, Kevin King, Game Cat, RPG Munch, Tier 2 DM, Far Adrift, Pete Strakulich, Dan Webb, Tessie Trekkie, Agile Monk, the Madman, and Flint Fireforge. Thank you very kindly for supporting the Gaming Gang by way of Patreon. All right. So tonight, let's talk about 5 fantasy role-playing games I think are more fun than the current edition of Dungeons & Dragons in its current state. And I think the first thing I'm going to mention is the current state of 5.5 D&D. I don't know what they've got planned for adventures going forward, because really the only thing that I have seen is the starter set that came out, which the starter set itself was really nicely done until you got to the adventure, and the adventure dragged that review score down pretty hard. I thought it was a pretty sad attempt to modernize the Keep on the Borderlands. Then we got the Faerun adventures that came out, and it was not even really adventures. They were adventure nuggets. A couple of pages in length, and just a whole book full of them. They were like encounters, really. So you had a volume full of various different encounters that couldn't even really tie them together. So like I said, I'm not sure what Wizards of the Coast has planned for Dungeons and Dragons. I think what they originally had in their pockets when 2024 came out with 5.5 is no longer going to be the case. Pete Stracklet said they're curious about the new Ravenloft. Yeah, because Ravenloft isn't going to be an adventure book in itself either. At least that's not how they're presenting it. It sounds more like it's going to be... Now, I'm not saying there won't be any adventures in it, but I think it's going to mainly focus on the domains of dread. So you're going to have Ravenloft, you're going to have something with Cthulhu and the Cthulhu mythos. I would hope the mythos is in it, not just Cthulhu. Sometimes in the Winter says they were highly disappointed with the Stranger Things box set. Yeah, that... I will say it was better than the first Stranger Things box set. That was god-awful. With the disgusting stink off the miniature that was in it. Yes, Pete Draculite says they hear Cthulhu will be in the new Ravenloft. I don't know. Maybe that was the news piece I shared on thegaminggang.com. Kevin R. Smith also points out that Lord Soth has a domain. That's what I saw too. I saw that. But I don't know. Laconic Lane says the encounters are so thin right now. I know they're going to be thin for the new Ravenloft. All depends on what they plan on doing. If they throw together one adventure for each domain and the adventure is 2-3 pages long, yeah, it's going to be nah. Wow. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see. I'm thinking I'm probably still on their list for review copies of stuff, so we shall see. So that is not the topic tonight, though. We're not talking about, well, do adventures for 5.5 D&D from Wizards of the Coast kind of suck now? Because they're really not adventures. They're just, even in the starter set, it was kind of the same thing. They didn't feel like cohesive adventures. It was just, oh, here's an encounter, here's an encounter, here's an encounter, here's an encounter. So, Coco B is with us tonight. Said, bad news, or Shadow Dark Games canceled. Good news, I can still hang around here for a while. Live! And in color. Right. So, the first fantasy role-playing game that I think is currently more fun than 5.5 D&D, you know pretty well, everybody. It is Castles and Crusades. from our friends over at Troll Lord Games. Let's take a quick peek. So as I discuss, I'll just flip through the book a little bit, give you a peek inside. I do want to throw a disclaimer out. We're not going to talk about any role-playing games that are really considered OSR. So, and yes, I know some folks out there think Castles and Crusades is kind of old school Renaissance. It is not, because it's not built on original D&D or BX or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It's really built off of 3. But the reason why I find this to be a very, very interesting fantasy role-playing game is because it still feels like a traditional fantasy role-playing game. We've got our standard characteristics, our attributes, our strength, dexterity, intelligence, constitution, wisdom, charisma, and such. But what makes Castles and Crusades a bit different is the siege engine, which is what they call their core mechanic. And when you're creating your character, you get to choose primary attributes and secondary attributes. And if you're a human character, you get to choose 3 primary, 3 secondary. If you are a non-human, you get 2 primary and 4 secondary, because you've got all these other cool things like being able to see in the dark and smell gold and don't need to sleep and immune to charm and sleep spells and so forth. So when you're attempting to perform a task that's not combat related, it's going to fall under one of your attributes. So if it is something that is your primary attribute, your core DC is a 12. Now, there might be some modifiers to it because of the difficulty of what you're trying to do, which may raise that or even possibly lower it if it's something that's fairly easy. So it's a 12. And then if you're using a secondary attribute, it's an 18 at its core, and then you go from there with the modifiers. And it makes for some very interesting characters because you don't necessarily have to take a primary in an attribute that's based on your character class, right? So if you're a fighter, you don't necessarily have to take strength as a primary attribute. And a lot of people who are far more clever than I am do that with their characters. They'll take their higher like attribute scores and leave those as secondary because you get modifiers for the higher score, you know, your 16, 17, 18. And they'll take the lower scores that maybe don't have a modifier, say your 12s, you know, your 11s, and make that a primary. So very interesting, kind of a little tweak to how things work in that respect. And I like the fact that you can really custom craft the sort of character you want to play as. So even if you're a fighter, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a low intelligence or you can't have intelligence as a primary stat. Very, very cool. Now, this is the player's book. This is the latest edition. This is the Reforged edition, which came out last year. This is, I think, would this be the 10th print run? Usually have in the front, they'll tell you. Yes. Okay. So this is the 10th printing. Now, you know, it's the Reforged edition because it'll have this label up there. The anniversary label. But we talked about this earlier this week. You can get this player book. It's like the 7th printing. Absolutely free in PDF. So it is still available, absolutely free, and all the rules to the game are here. So what you would find in most role-playing games between the player's guide and the GM guide is all in one volume. Now, there is a Castle Keeper's Guide. The game master in Castles and Crusades is referred to as the Castle Keeper, but it's all just optional rules. It's all just additional details. It is not required to run Castles and Crusades. Now, there is a Monsters and Treasure book, which in my opinion, you do need. So Castles and Crusades is really a 2-volume fantasy role-playing game. But it is not overly difficult to take old Dungeons and Dragons monster manuals all the way up to probably 3rd edition and convert them to Castles and Crusades. And that goes for adventures as well. That is another really cool thing about Castles and Crusades. But having said that, Troll Lord Games also supports Castles and Crusades tremendously. There is always new content coming out for CNC, be it adventures, supplements, region guides. We've actually got, if I remember correctly, there's like a Japan setting. There's, I think, like a mythic Russia setting. There's, huge amount of content out there. Now, one thing that we do run across from time to time are a few more typos and grammatical errors than we're usually used to seeing in role-playing games. I don't find that to be a huge deal. I know some people have gotten a little worked up about it. But up to, like, as an example, up to the Reforged edition, it was something that you would see, oh, it's a new print run, and be like, oh, the same typo's still in there. So yes, I thought that was a little weird too. So just a peek inside. Retired on the Bike asks, isn't Wizards of the Coast already working on 6th edition? They were working on 6th edition when 2024 came out. Now, does that mean it's anywhere close to being ready? No. I think we see more and more companies out there, and thankfully, Troll Lord Games is not one of them, but we are seeing more and more where they're looking to adopt kind of the Games Workshop sort of approach to editions, where it used to be you'd get 10 or more years or maybe forever out of an edition of a role-playing game. Now we're starting to see less than 10 years, maybe every 5 years you're getting a new edition. I don't necessarily agree with that approach. I don't know. But as far as Castles and Crusades goes, outside of some very, very minor tweaks, this is still the same game that came out 20-some years ago. So very, very nice. So that is our first fantasy role-playing game that I think is more fun than 5.5 D&D right now. Max Apocalypse has joined us in chat. So is our friend Christopher Lundgren. Says, yes, Lord Soth is in the new Ravenloft. They pointed it out in the new live D&D play show. I saw some people online just savaging that actual play. I don't know. I'm not going to watch it. But kind of like, oh, yeah, okay. Easy target, everybody. Quick, go get your views. Go get your clicks. Just don't get it. Oh, I should also point out, this is the homage cover. So it's the homage to the player's handbook for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I do believe the next print run has new artwork on all the books. So there is that. So I think I may have said, oh, Matthew Blackwell is also popping on in. Said they like to watch the Troll Lord Games actual plays. I haven't seen those. I got to be honest. I've probably seen all of 15 minutes of actual plays in my lifetime. Let's see. Kevin King says, after a few sessions of Castles and Crusades, Pathfinder and 5e players get real cautious in their experience. Yeah, because characters die. Far easier. Cyber Splendor said the actual play was fine. Nothing great, nothing terrible, but that's 99% of actual plays. Yeah, that is true. All right, next up, Land of Eam. Man, what a fun role-playing game this is, and what a fun setting this is. This is the core rulebook. This is available in a slipcase set, which includes the core rulebook, the Mucklin's setting book, as well as the bestiary. And Land of Eam is from Star and Flame Games by way of Exalted Funeral. Some people have called this Lord of the Rings meets the Muppets. I can see why they say that, but I don't think that gives the game enough credit. I got to be honest, it doesn't. So Land of Eam is very, very old school in its approach, but this is not an OSR game by any stretch of the imagination because the dice mechanics are quite different. So, as an example, you're using a 12-sided die. So you're looking at rolling a 12-sided die plus your skill modifier. And then 1 to 2, complete failure, 3 to 5, failure with a plus, 6 to 8, success with a twist, 9 to 11, success, and 12 is a complete success. Pete Draculich is off to go kill player characters. See you next month, Pete Draculich. So that gives us kind of a breakdown here. So as far as the dice mechanics, kind of reminiscent of Powered by the Apocalypse a little bit. So as far as our attributes, we've got Vim, Vigor, Knack, and Know-How. We've got stats like Courage, Attack, Defense, Quest Points. We've got inventory slots. This is a relatively easy role-playing game to teach to new players. Now, I will point out that this is not necessarily a simple role-playing game. It's just not a very difficult role-playing game. But this has some really interesting character species. As you can see, we've got frog folk, the rascal. Here are the various species that are available to us. We've got mushroom folks. We've got the wug, the bugbear, the human, the goblin, the gnome, the boggart, the boggle, the imp. And I will also mention that if you're seeing the artwork here and you're thinking, oh, this is just a game for kids, or even whale people, this is not a childish role-playing game at all. The setting itself is very interesting. The Mucklins, there are different regions. So depending on the sort of adventuring you're looking to get into, you can set your tales in various different regions. This has a really strong hex crawl element to this as well. So Kevin R. Smith says, not simple, but not Rollmaster. Well, nothing is Rollmaster except for Rollmaster. So, so Max Apocalypse was asking if the stream was stuttering. I just took a peek. We're not dropping any frames, so we should be all right. But as I mentioned, this kind of has an old school vibe to it because we do have a lot of random tables. We've got tables here for inspiration for the game master. But as far as our core mechanics, really the dice mechanic that I was talking about, that's pretty much it. Combat doesn't really have a lot of crunch to it. It is fairly abstract, but we do have like conditions and, like serious wounds and things like that. But as you can see, just the core rulebook itself really has a lot of content in it. We've got a bit of a bestiary. Of course, there's far more in the bestiary book. Although I will point out, I was kind of surprised that there was some redundancy with the bestiary because all of the entries from the core book are also in that. So I guess there's a little bit of lag going on. It's a YouTube thing, folks. If I'm not showing any drop frames, it's a YouTube thing. It happens every once in a while. There you go. Just kind of giving you an idea here. We got a bunch of random tables here for encounters, discoveries, treasure, traps, and obstacles. This was one of my games of the year for last year. This did come out last year, and one of my absolute favorite role-playing games that arrived on the scene. Very nice. Next up, we talked about this role-playing game last night because there is a new supplement that arrived for it. And then it was also mentioned on Tuesday's show when we were talking about free role-playing games out there because according to a couple of people in chats, Mazes is available. The core rules for Mazes is available absolutely free. Now, I had originally received the box set without a box from 9th Level Games, so it arrived in 4 booklets. I think nowadays it is a single book. Now, as far as Mazes go, Mazes has a very strong sword and sorcery vibe to it, which you would not expect because of the game mechanically. Mechanically, this is a super rules light role-playing game. It utilizes the polymorph system. So you have 4 core roles in the game. So we've got the Paragon, who uses a D4. The Vanguard uses a D6. The Fighter uses a D8, and the Sentinel uses a D10. And then we have books, boots, blades, and bones. And depending on the character role, you're going to have certain things that you're going to be better at than the other characters in your party. So we have a saving roll. So a saving roll is a roll that a player makes to avoid something that the MC, that's the game master, is doing against them. A save is almost always taken off turn unless it's a response to an action the player has just taken. For example, the player opens the door and the MC has made a boot save, has made them make a boot save because the floor falls out from under them. So Chris Lundgren is still pushing that Mazes and Minotaurs. Man, Chris must have a lot of these publishers sending him money to talk about their games in chat. So we have hearts and stars. We have the die. So as an example here, we've got outcomes for books, boots, blades, and bones. At the most basic level, when you take an action or make a save, you roll your die, right? So if your die is the D4, you're always rolling the D4. Attempting to roll one of the target numbers listed on your character sheet for one of the 4 actions: books, boots, blades, or bones. Because of the distribution of these numbers, each of the rolls is more or less likely to roll them, resulting in each roll behaving differently in the game. So we get a character sheet. I believe we have character sheets in the back here. Might be wrong. Oh no, here we go. Here's our character sheet. Just like so. And it goes through, okay, so our books, our blades, our boots, our bones. So when a character is testing boots, they need to roll a 3, 4, or a 5. Okay? So remember, 3, 4, or 5. So that's on a D4. If your die is a D4, it's on a D6. If you use a D6, on a D10, once again, it's like blades, 4, 5, 6, or 7. So if you're using a D4, you're kind of the wizard, the scholar. So that's why a book, if you're rolling books, you roll a 2 or a 3. And then it's going to tell you who's the best at these different skills, right? So the Paragon, Vanguard, the Fighter, and then the Sentinel. And bones is whenever you need to steel your resolve or resist pain and disease. Bones is both your body's health and your overall strength and endurance. But this is one of these role-playing games where if you were introducing this to people who had never played a fantasy role-playing game, you could get them on board and understanding what's going on in about 10 minutes. No joke. Because I just explained really the core essence of this role-playing game. And one of the reasons why I find this to be more fun than current Dungeons and Dragons is that it's very easy to onboard people into mazes. It's got a serious sword and sorcery vibe. So this is designed as a sword and sorcery role-playing game. So when we get into the sorcery book or I want to say, I think that's the environment book, and then the monster book, it all has a very heavy sword and sorcery flavor to it. Plus, there is tons of support for mazes. There are all these additional supplements that have come out. There are adventure campaigns that have come out. We just talked about one last night, City of Skull. And then there's also Return to City of Skull, which just came out in print. There's a player's guide that's got new roles to utilize. And there are dozens of adventures that are available for mazes. Keith Ulu asked, mazes and monsters? No, this is just called Mazes. It is from 9th Level Games. If you go take a peek at it over on TTRPG, you'll be blown away by how much is out for this game, how much support this game sees, and you'll be thinking, why in the world have I never heard of this? Honestly, I wish that I still had a contact with the folks over at 9th Level Games, because I would have loved to have continued sharing coverage of their games, but I think they changed their PR person. You know how it goes. Kevin King asks, Tom Hanks' signature is not included? No, it is not. And yes, I knew what Cthulhu was referring to, but I wasn't sure if they were also asking, is the game called Mazes and Monsters? All right, Sometimes in the Winter says, I'm kind of hyped for Wrestle Ron? because it uses polymorph, same as mazes. It's inspired by Castlevania wrestling and pixel art video games. I don't even like wrestling. And they're in. That's cool. You know, there are quite a few of the 9th level games that now use polymorph. I think polymorph started with Kobold's Ate My Baby. Or is it Kobold's Ate the Baby? Or My Baby? Or Your Baby? Something like that. Anyway, it is a fun role-playing game where the players all take on the roles of kobolds, who are pretty wacky. And it wasn't necessarily the polymorph system at the time, but I seem to recall the mechanics were similar in some ways. The Tabletop Scholar says they're a bit surprised Maze didn't break out a bit harder than it has given its design principles. You know, I'm with you on that. I think part of it may have been that the box set was coming out when there were all these other box sets. So we had, like, there was the Swords and Wizardry box set that was out at the same time. I had just got a little lost in the shuffle as far as things went. Plus, reality is, I mean, the covers on these aren't really screaming by me. The interior does. All right, next up, let's talk about Pathfinder 2nd edition remastered. And I like Pathfinder. I think Pathfinder is really, really nicely done. Pathfinder is a go-to fantasy role-playing game, especially if you're utilizing a virtual tabletop. If you want crunch, if you want player character options as far as creation, if you want all these different feats and abilities and spells and so forth, you really can't go wrong with Pathfinder. And the thing that's really nice about a virtual tabletop is it automates loads and loads of the mental heavy lifting that is part of this. And yes, I know a lot of people out there call Pathfinder Math Finder. And yes, there is math involved. But is it a tremendous amount more than you find in Dungeons and Dragons? No. Is it more? Yes. So if you're someone who is terrible at math, okay, well, maybe Pathfinder wouldn't necessarily be up your alley. But as far as the various different species that you can play, all the different classes that are available to you as well. Now, this is the player core. So this has the core rule books, or no, I should say this is the core rule book. But there's also player cores that include more species, more classes, more feats, more subclasses, tons and tons of additional content. Now, what I always tell people to do if they're interested in checking out Pathfinder, keep your eyes peeled, because a few times a year, you will see Paizo Inc. have some sort of a bundle offer, especially if you're checking out Humble Bundle, because those tend to be some of the best of the Pathfinder deals that pop up. I'm trying to remember if we've seen Pathfinder on Fanatical. I don't think so. Maybe not to this point. But you can normally get the PDFs for a smoking deal. And I know there is, I think there is still one that is over on Humble Bundle. Somebody maybe out there in chat can take a peek to see if it's still live. But it includes the core remastered books, which is a big deal because I think it's the first time we've seen the 5 remastered books in a single bundle offer. And I think you can get everything in the bundle 20 some PDFs off the top of my head for about $30. So it's really, really nicely done. As you can see, these are all of the various different classes and the different feats that they have available to them. Ancestry feats, witch feats, so the class feat, I should say. I like the artwork in Pathfinder. I like the second edition artwork more than the first edition. The first edition, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it had a little more of a cartoon vibe to it, which is fine. I just like a little more of a realistic look to my obviously fictional artwork. Sometimes in the Winter said, I think they had one with Abomination Vaults, plus a bunch of other Pathfinder PDFs at Fanatical that ended a few weeks ago, and they slept on it. That is a possibility. I'm wondering if the one that's over on Humble Bundle right now is Virtual Tabletop one. Sometimes in the Winter says the Humble Bundle actually has 6 more days to go. Tim Johnson's with us, says they run Pathfinder, found it far faster than the Valiant games they ran previously. Chris Lundgren says, yes, Pathfinder is also a good game. Pathfinder Society events are not easy to get into in their area of Orange County. Savage Splendor says, honestly, Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a boring game that's mostly illusion of choice and what you can do with characters. Ouch! Why don't you tell us how you really feel? See, I like the 3-action economy. If you stack this up against Dungeons and Dragons, I think that Pathfinder makes for more interesting encounters than D&D. Now, granted, this is one of those role-playing games where the characters tend to stare at their character sheets to try to figure out what is the solution to the challenge that's facing them. I don't necessarily care for that. This is also a role-playing game where you need to have players who are willing to understand what their characters are capable of, as opposed to leaving it to the game master to always sit there and be telling them, oh, okay, this is what this spell does. Oh, well, what does this do? Okay, what does this feat do? So I'm warning you on that count there. And something else I will point out is the pricing of the physical books is a bit higher than other fantasy role-playing games out there. That's why I tell people to always keep their eyes peeled. If they're curious about Pathfinder, watch Humble Bundle. Now you can keep your eyes peeled over at Fanatical, because you can usually find every few months a really nice bundle pop up. So Tim Johnson says, opinions are going to be subjective. Yep. Haven't had any problem with illusion of choice in their games. And they've been playing games for nearly 42 years now. But yeah, some tables can do that. Chris Langer points out that the 2nd edition starter set's one of the very best starters that they have ever owned. And yes, next week you get a brand new one. That was our lead-off news piece. The brand new Pathfinder 2nd edition remaster beginner box. So Chris was also talking about Wild West role-playing games. Yeah, there are quite a few of them out there. it's just, you never hear people really talking about them. I have heard more people talk about Boot Hill in the past few years, and it's not a lot, but I hear more about Boot Hill than I do about new Wild West games coming out. And I'm not talking about Weird West, because that's quite different. I'm talking about, the legitimate historical, or you're aiming for a historical or relatively historical Western role-playing game. Semper Buffo points out Deadlands. Right. That's why I'm saying Weird West. You got a lot of Weird West out there. But, all right. So just a quick peek. Showing you the player core. Oh, it was the player core for Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remaster. Tim Johnson said, I think there was some Deadlands news a little while back. Yeah, there had been some Pinnacle Entertainment Group news recently. I'm trying to remember what the Deadlands was. I think it's another anniversary edition, if I remember correctly. All right. Last fantasy role-playing game, which I think is more fun than the current Dungeons & Dragons 5.5 from our friends over at Kobold Press. Tales of the Valiant. And people say, well, Tales of the Valiant, that's Dungeons & Dragons, man. No, actually, it isn't. Now, there are some things that, were tweaked for Tales of the Valiant. Now, it is part of the open game license. So there is that. So it is built off of 5e Dungeons and Dragons. And some of the tweaks that made their way into Tales of the Valiant also made their way into, or very similar, made their way into 5.5 D&D. So what makes Tales of the Valiant more fun than current Dungeons and Dragons? And it's not necessarily the system. So I'm not knocking the system. I'm just saying it's very, very similar to Dungeons and Dragons. The heroes here, at least in my opinion, I don't think are, well, I should, let me rephrase. I think the player characters here are a little squishier than they are in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, they do fall into the heroic category. So it's not as if you're, running in OSR first level adventure or dungeon crawl classics with a funnel adventure with 0 level characters who can barely chew gum and walk at the same time. But I also found that the player characters in Tales of the Valiant just feel more in tune with the setting. And as far as Kobold Press goes, their big selling point to me is the Midgard setting. Now, of course, now they've got the Labyrinth, which connects all these different worlds. So if you wanted to be running a game that's set in Greyhawk or Faerun or Golarion or whatever, you can also kind of connect your Tales of the Valiant adventures with those settings. But as far as the Midgard setting, which just had a news piece earlier about the Northlands books, it is high fantasy, but there is also a really nice dark vibe to it. Not grim dark by any stretch of the imagination, but not the kind of high fantasy that we see in like Dungeons and Dragons, where we've got, evil that flourishes in parts of Midgard, which is something that I think is very, very cool. it's just something that, since I've read the Midgard World book, it's been a few years now, it's my all-time favorite outside of, well, I guess I would say it's neck and neck with the old world or Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So yeah, I dig it a bunch. Also, something you want to keep in mind, the people who work on Kobold Press releases have been in the hobby for a long time. So this isn't a company that hires 35 freelancers to put something together. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have a lot of people working together on a book, but if you take a look at the credits page for many of the releases from Kobold Press, you're going to find that a lot of people with a lot of experience with fantasy role-playing games. So I like that. I like that Tales of Valiant does have a little bit of a old school mentality, especially to its adventures. So you never see, well, okay, I can't say you never because I haven't seen every single adventure for Tales of the Valiant, but I have not seen any adventures where I sat there reading through it and thought, well, where's the challenge for the players? Their characters are just going to skate right through all of this, which is something that you'll encounter with Dungeons and Dragons. Like I said, as far as the starter set for 5.5 was really nice until you got to the adventure. And it was like, really? There's nothing here. There's no challenge in any of the Caves of Chaos or anything that the players, at least if they had half a brain cell, were just going to completely walk right on through it. So, anywho, I like the artwork throughout for Tales of Valiant also. Like I said, I think the big selling point for Tales of the Valiant is because it is built on 5e Dungeons and Dragons. There is a familiarity, so it's not that difficult to segue to Tales of the Valiant from D&D. It also has a bit of an old school mentality to the proceedings, and it is very, very well supported. You have various different adventures that'll pop up in PDF. The virtual tabletop support is very solid, although there's usually a bit of a delay from a physical release to a virtual tabletop release, I've noticed. Not terrible, but it is there. I don't tend to normally see something come out for Tales of the Valiant in print, in PDF, and for virtual tabletop all at the same time. And the people over at Kobold Press are really good folk. I love when I have my annual interview with Wolfgang Bauer. Wolfgang Bauer is a really nice guy. He is very supportive of the gaming gang, as are other people over at Kobold Press, which I really, really appreciate. So this is the player guide for it. Now, this is a role-playing game which utilizes essentially 2 books. There is the Game Master's Guide. It is, in my opinion, not necessarily a must-own in order to run Tales of the Valiant. You do need the Monster Vault. That you do want to have for Tales of the Valiant. And the Game Master's Guide is excellent, so I don't want to dissuade anybody from picking it up. It is really nicely done. It's actually one of my favorite GM guides, but I would not say that it is a crucial element to being able to run Tales of the Valiant. So let's see. Let's follow up with some folks in chat. Sometimes in the winter, it's basically 5e, but they fix a few things that are annoying about 5e. No more pick stats or feat. You can always pick +1 to a stat and a feat, or just go for 2 stats, some discussion of Gamma World using the 4E D&D system. It was a blast, according to Savage Splendor. I've actually never seen it. Chris Lundgren says, most talked about Wild West historical RPG people keep telling them to get is Cow Punchers, but they have not pulled the trigger. Tim Johnson says it's less cozy feeling. Yeah, you know what? That is a very nice way to put it. Chris Lundgren says, I think the actual Lord of the Rings role-playing game is an excellent deal. Bought a lot of it recently. I thought that might be on your future list. I wanted to stick to things that are, because Lord of the Rings is Lord of the Rings. So there are people out there who enjoy fantasy role-playing games, but do not want to play Lord of the Rings because it is very limiting as far as especially Magic users. So, you know, we'll talk about that in just a sec as I wrap up here with chat. Kim King says they've run Tales of the Valiant for several groups. Players saw no difference between it and 5e. They did like Kobold Adventures better than Wizards of the Coast, just like Paizo. Yeah, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is a lot of these more modern role-playing games, like Tales of the Valiant, like Pathfinder, like 5.5 D&D, Nimble 5e, got to mention another that I have no familiarity with. So when I do these sorts of topics, I have to have some knowledge about the game that I'm talking about. Because I could sit here and be like, oh, Nimble 5e is fantastic. Oh, Draw Steel. Got to get Draw Steel. I don't know anything about them outside of like sell sheet information that I have shared with you folks if I did news pieces about them. So when I do a topic, I like to present stuff that I've at least read so that you have kind of I have an idea that I'm not just blowing smoke up your asses, because that is not my style. Chris Langren asks, is it easier to die in Tales of the Valiant or D&D 5.5? Does it handhold PCs? Is death rare? I would say death is not as rare as in D&D. I would tell you that now. Are your characters going to die as often as they would in Dungeon Crawl Classics, which was not included in this list simply because it skews a little too much towards the OSR. And I know it's not an OSR game, but still it does kind of. So we've got Zodrin with us. Says, I think the GM guide is the best of this generation compared to Paizo's, D&D's, and Tales of the Valiant. Tabletop Scholar says, Nimble is simpler in some ways, but also convoluted in others. Semper Buffo says, I just discovered the Laundry 2nd edition from Cubicle 7. We might get an opportunity to take a peek at those when they get out here in print. It's less gritty than Delta Green, a bit of paranoia. The Office with its tongue-in-cheek approach, very British. I've listened to some of the audiobooks for The Laundry. Tabletop Scholar asks, do you know if we're getting a Traveler Classic Mayday box set reproduction in 2026? I have not heard anything about that. I think that would be super cool if we did, but I don't know. So are we talking about a little black box with the little black books, but we would have the 3 little black books? Because I would consider getting it. But if you remember, because I had it, I had the original, well, I had a print run of it. in the very early 80s. Probably about 81 is when I think I would probably have picked it up. There is no pizzazz to those books. I don't even recall if there's artwork in any of the three. If there is, it's maybe a couple of pieces of line art. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I'd be interested in getting it. Because I don't have the little black books. I have the PDFs, but I don't have like the physical box. Yeah, I wouldn't mind having like first, seven? For 7 little black books? That'd be kind of cool. But no, I haven't heard anything about it. So I don't know. The Hero's Journey 2nd edition by Barrel Rider Games. I've shared some news from those folks. It's a pretty great Lord of the Rings inspired game that has a bit more to its magic users than other games. Right. Okay. So let me get back to the Lord of the Rings. I like the One Ring. I like the Lord of the Rings role playing, which is for 5e. If you are not a fan, see, I was trying to, because I don't want to insult anyone who's huge fans of Lord of the Rings, because I'm a Tolkien fan. I would fall asleep if I tried to read the Silmarillion or Unfinished Tales or anything like that. But The Hobbit, the trilogy, yeah, I'm a fan. Try to at least read or listen to the audiobooks about once a year, maybe once every 2 years. But Lord of the Rings is a very specific sort of role-playing game. And that's why up until probably Middle-earth role-playing, and I don't think Middle-earth role-playing pulled it off fantastically itself, but it was better than the kit bashing that people tried to do with Dungeons and Dragons to make it, Lord of the Rings, or to play Lord of the Rings by way of D&D. And it's not a role-playing game that has a very wide bestiary. So you don't have a ton of different opponents, especially if you're looking at having a role-playing game where you are going to go from being, a hobbit who's, leaving home for the first time to, I'm about to throw this ring into this volcano. So you don't have the same sort of progression, like leveling, I guess I would say. And then, because like in an epic fantasy role-playing game, your Dungeons and Dragons, your Pathfinders, your Tales of the Valiants and such, your early low-level characters have a multitude of different sorts of opponents that they can tackle that are going to be challenging for them. So you've got the giant rats, you got the giant spiders, you got your goblins, your kobolds, your sturges. I can just go on and on and on. Whereas if you're playing Lord of the Rings and you want to be, true to the books, your player characters are going to be kind of outclassed most of the time, unless you're taking on the role of like Aragorn or Gandalf. But I remember, I could have swore years ago, I know for a fact, years and years ago, in an issue of, I believe it was Dragon Magazine, there was an article that talked about how Gandalf was a 2nd level magic user. The Gandalf from the books was probably pretty much about as 2nd level. So Roger Perdome says, Merp was good. I think the problem that I had with Middle-earth role-playing was the adventures didn't feel very adventure-y. the adventures usually felt as if they were more setting book than anything else, because the setting books that Iron Crown Enterprises would put out was really, really good. But I seem to recall that there were some adventures in that, and the adventures just felt sort of blah, which is what I do think is kind of an intrinsic issue with Lord of the Rings role-playing games in general. Thankfully, with Cubicle 7 Games and now with Free League Publishing for the past few years, you had some really solid designers working on the Lord of the Rings role-playing as well as the One Ring, so that the adventures do feel like they're taking place in Middle-earth. They do feel like Tolkien's Middle-earth. Still may not necessarily be the most mind-blowing adventures out there, but they are pretty good. And I think that's something that we really did not see with Middle-earth role-playing. Bamboozle Great Crowd is with us. Says that Middle-earth role-playing critical hit charts were nasty. Well, those just carried over from Arms Law, Claw Law, Spell Law. All right. Age of Adventure is also with us. While the system does matter, I think whether a game is fun depends on the GM and the players, their expectations, and dynamic. I completely agree with you on that. I have said umpteen times over and over again that mechanics, rules, in my opinion, they don't really matter that much. I am not a slave to rules by any stretch of the imagination. You know, I'll go with the vibe at the table. So yes, I've said umpteen times that the best game master can take an absolute garbage system and just run the hell out of it with a group of players. And a bad GM can take the most fantastic role-playing game system and just completely destroy it and essentially have an unplayable game at the game table. So yes, completely agree with you on that. All right, we're getting ready to wrap up. What about Dolmenwood? Dolmenwood would have made the list, but it kind of falls into that really close to the OSR. And it wasn't that long ago that I did an OSR video where we did talk about Dolmenwood. So I didn't want to keep rolling out the same exact games all the time. Just like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I'm a big fan. I really like it. It is a great role-playing game. I share it a little too much. So I thought, all right, we'll keep Whiffrip on the shelf tonight. This one. So wanted to share a little bit of love for some role-playing games that maybe I don't talk about enough, including Pathfinder, because I don't tend to do the Paizo Inc. reviews. That's Sammy. So you don't hear me talk that much about Pathfinder. So I wanted to give Pathfinder a bit of love. I want to give Mazes some love. Land of Eam, Castles and Crusades get some good coverage all the time here on the channel. And of course, also want to give a shout out to my friends over at Kobold Press, because I really think Tales of the Valiant is a very well done 5e adjacent role-playing game. I really do. And I do think, as it stands right now, it is more fun than 5.5 D&D. Age of Adventure says, I'd love to play in a Jeff run game. I never claimed to be a fantastic game master. I try. So there's that. I'll tell you one thing. I feed off the energy at a table. So if there's energy with the players, man, you are going to be in for probably a pretty good time. If it's people who are like, oh, I didn't get any, I worked late last night and I didn't get any sleep. Then it's probably not going to be the most fantastic game experience you've ever had. But I try. Everybody always tells me they had a really great time. And I have players who still remember stuff from the first time I ran, like Massive Nyarlathotep and the starting adventures in the Call of Cthulhu 1-inch box from 81 and stuff like that. So, yeah. I'm not one of these game masters, though. It was like, oh, yeah, I don't need any advice. I don't read anybody's advice. Of course, I'm always looking to become a better game master. I hope those of you who do run games with your family and friends are always looking to be just a little better. Entertain people just a little more. All right, everybody. That is it for this time out. If you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watch live and took part in chat, you get a tip of the cap. Because not only are you keeping me company, you're also keeping each other company while I'm sharing the news or pontificating about a topic and what have you. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you for taking time out to watch any of the videos here on the channel. Of course, when you're not watching videos here on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, including all the news pieces you just heard about tonight. All that information is available there right now if you were kind of curious about anything I shared news about. You'll also find Sammy's reviews, which are written reviews. They're not video reviews, so you wouldn't see them here on YouTube. And a whole lot more, including our comic book coverage from my brother Greg. There's a lot there, seriously. By now, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, be sure to ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, select all notifications because it's supposed to let you know. That's a key word here. Supposed to let you know. Not only when the Dispatch streams live, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings, right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. It's also supposed to inform you when I share other videos, such as my recent review of Cthulhu by Gaslight, Dust and Blood from Chaosium Inc. And of course, stay tuned. More reviews on the horizon. Probably have a couple more before I return with the next episode of the Dispatch. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Hopefully I'll get to see you when I return next month. And as always, I certainly hope every single one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.